Every single day, Kevin Quinn lived with depression. Thoughts of suicide plagued him. Yet, deep inside, he knew he had a bigger purpose in life, and he was determined not to force his children to have to tell the same story he had to tell his friends about his dad. You do not want to miss Kevin's interview.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Kevin Quinn is an entrepreneur, a Marine War veteran, an amazing friend, amazing father, and a survivor of suicide. Kevin was physically, emotionally, and verbally abused. He was bullied in school and sexually assaulted. Kevin lost his sister and father to suicide, and at 17, Kevin attempted suicide. There are many listeners who are going to relate to your story, Kevin, and I think more so now than ever. This is a very appropriate conversation that you and I are going to have today. And I think, and you will agree with me, that suicide affects all of us, has touched most of our lives. So please tell us your story.
Well, thank you so much, Carol. I appreciate that. It's as many years as I lived on this planet now, it's still kind of difficult to hear that. When you go back through kind of the Rolodex of my life.
Right.
And as you mentioned, we were young when we moved here. And, I was born in England, moved here when I was 5. My mother did not grow up in a very affluent household. So of the 3 daughters, 2 of them were raised from basically childbirth until they were 16 or 17 in a Catholic convent. So my mom was one of those. She was raised in the Catholic convent. So, think priests and nuns. That's who raised her entire life. So kind of what I would say, would be more of a very authoritarian type lifestyle under priests and nuns. That's how she was raised, and that's how she, in turn raised us boys, because that's what she knew. And looking back through my childhood, it was the norm, but the abuse was almost daily, because that's how she went through it. But I think hers went to kind of a next level. So for myself growing up, it was there was a lot of I would say mental, verbal, emotional abuse from my mom. Those aren't the things that you expect, but that was the normal for me. That's all I knew growing up. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I was really able to process that more, and actually down the road forgive her. But that abuse bundled in with the bullying in school. I was sexually abused as a child. I was sexually abused by my Cub Scout leader and our priest. And so all that stuff kind of came to a head. I was in counseling as a young kid, 10, 11, 12, because I was a problem. It wasn't what was happening to me that was the problem. It was me. I was the problem. That's how it was diagnosed. So I went through counseling and dealing with those types of things, trying to figure out why I was acting up. Later learned in life that it wasn't my fault. But at that time, I was told it was my fault. And all these different things, finally, they weighed so much on me. At the age of 17, I attempted suicide. They found me. They got me to the hospital. I had taken all these pills. They were able to, basically forget the term for it, but they pumped my stomach, got everything out, and got me, on the road to better days that I thought at the time, and then so the attempted suicide at 17, I survived, thankfully, because here I am as an old man now at 57, able to, able to, as I hope to, able to, save lives. I want everyone to see their tomorrows, but for me at the time, I didn't see that. And I wanted everything that was going on in my life to be in the rear view. I was over it. I was over the family life, everything else. And then off I went, in my junior year of college, decided to join the military and ended up going into the Marines. And then, off we go with the Gulf War and everything that came from that, and I came home and tried to integrate back into just the world as it is. And, thought I was doing everything right, married, few kids, 3 kids, all the good things, all the stories you want to tell everybody, but I still wasn't over some of the mental health issues I was dealing with. So I've carried that with me for a long time. In fact, I used to tell people all the time that I've got a backpack full of trauma, and I hope to find a place to leave that one day. And I eventually did, just a couple of years ago, I was able to find a place for that. But, I carried that for, as I mentioned, for a long time. And that, unbeknownst to me, that would surface in so many different ways and affect, just everyday dealings, conversations, relationships, and I finally learned that it wasn't the moment that was going on that was causing the problem for me. I was, bringing trauma from my mother back into and everything. And so anyways, as you had mentioned before, military background, Marine Corps for myself. My brother is a Marine veteran. He's a 100% disabled veteran. He too struggles with his mental health. My pops, so my dad, the guy who raised me, he was a retired Vietnam veteran. And, I don't know what all was going on with him at the time, but 32 years ago, he took his own life. And my brother Mark and I were the last ones to see him. He was missing for a week. We jumped in the truck and we started driving around. Where we live, we drove, a few hours this way, a couple hours that way, and we hit one of his fishing spots, which happened to be a couple hours south of us, and we found him. And he was there. He happened to be in this outdoor restroom when we pulled up, and we called his name, and he came out, and he didn't look good because he'd been out there for a week doing his own thing, just living in his truck, really. And we had a conversation with him. We're like, "What's going on? Why? I mean, where have you been? Everybody's at home worried about you." And he outright told us he'd been, trying to take his own life. And then we, tried to ask questions. Why? What's going on? And he gave us, his explanation of the things that were going on in his life at the time. But the real one at the time, this is a man who, retired Vietnam veteran, a chef, always worked hard, always had 2 or 3 jobs so he could take care of his family. And, he got caught down this rabbit hole, this entrepreneur life, an MLM company of all things, and put everything he had into this MLM, and it didn't materialize. So he lost everything. And, he was falling behind on his taxes, and that's what did it for him. The IRS wanted back taxes, and here's a man who had probably a couple $100,000 in equity in his home, could have sold it, but his pride wouldn't let him do it, this man from the South. And he took his life. That was his answer. He promised us he was coming home. And, my one regret in this whole situation here is that I didn't get in the truck with him and come home with him.
Of course.
He promised us he was coming back, and he did not. A week later, his body was found by some guys out motorcycling out in that area. And it just crushed me, and it just, in so many different ways, it crushed me. And that didn't help with my mental health either, and so, that was, 92, in 2012, my sister, who was married to a Marine Corps intel officer, she took her own life. She got a disease that she didn't want to put the family through. She was married to a beautiful man in Blake. They'd been together since they were in 5th grade. And, she had 2 kids, had, 2 young children in Blake, and she chose to take her own life because she didn't want to put them through what she was going to have to go through. And, my golly, she was just the most beautiful person, such a beautiful spirit. Everybody loved her. And it just, that really hit me. It was just like, what in the heck, and so as we come to where we are today and what you were just talking about, I think the wake up call for me, and I've learned a lot about this, as we get to looking at generational as well as DNA. The wake up call for me was 3.5 years ago when my daughter attempted suicide.
Oh
And
my goodness, are you serious?
yeah, so my daughter attempted suicide, young mother, and she was going through some issues with her relationship and the husband. And she called me in a panic because she did not want to leave Roman without a mother. And I lived a couple miles away. I raced over, ran in. She'd cut her wrist. I got her wrist wrapped up, got her into my car, and drove her to the emergency room. I don't know why I didn't call 911, but got her to the emergency room. We got her in, and they took care of her. They healed up her wrists, and after a couple hours in the emergency room, we got her off. She went over to a mental health unit, a support facility for her for about a week. And so, here's my daughter who still struggles with her mental health. We talk about it, every once in a while. It's not an everyday thing, but she's dealing with her own battles, trying to get to a happy place for herself. So, when you look at my story is just, directly. It's my own family, my pops, my sister, my daughter attempted it. My brother, he deals with those thoughts, and obviously my attempt. And then for me, throughout my entire life, I've had my peaks and my valleys. Depression hits, anxiety hits. When you're a high-strung individual like myself and an entrepreneur, the peaks and the valleys in the business side can also bring about peaks and valleys in your mental health. So here I am today, as I mentioned, at 57, found my passion and my purpose and realized that I need to spend every day I can on this planet so I can help save lives. I don't want other parents, I don't want other children, siblings to have to experience the same kind of pain that I have throughout my life.
That's a great passion. I have some questions. Number one, how did you deal with the guilt after your father committed suicide? And did your brother experience it the same way?
Wow, boy, that's sorry, it's bringing back some memories with my pops. Um, you know, my brother and I haven't spoken about it. Uh, it was really tough for me because my pops was my man. He was my guy. He was the one
Mm,
person that, I knew always had my back. I knew my pops loved me, and I didn't have that kind of relationship with my mother. I had a very strained relationship with my mother, but my pops was my favorite. He was if I had an issue, I went to my pops.
mm-hmm.
When I first got home from the Marines, I got it right after the Gulf War. When I first got home from the Marines, he was the one waiting for me at the airport, and so, it was hard for me when he left because I couldn't understand why. He had so many people that loved him. He had an immense group of friends. Just he was so connected in so many circles. Everyone loved my pops. We loved him. And I just really felt like my anchor in this world, the one person that protected me. I was an adult then when he did it. I was
Right.
25, but he was my anchor throughout my life, and he left. But what really, really, really hit me was the fact that I had a chance. In my head, still to this day, I felt like I could have saved him, and I didn't. I didn't get in the truck with him. I didn't get him in the truck with us. Whatever we needed to, we did not bring him back because I believed him. He's never lied to me throughout my life, at least not that I know of. So I always had so much faith in this man, this amazing human being, to believe him that he was coming back, and he didn't. And so I've carried guilt my entire life for not stepping in, for not doing what I needed to ensure that he came home. And so yeah, there's always been a lot of guilt in relation to that. And I look forward to the next life, and I look forward to connecting with him and just letting him know that how much he was loved and how he was missed. And, I just, like you said, there's been a lot of guilt in not stepping in to save that man.
Now, with hindsight, if someone is determined, like if your dad was determined to commit suicide, would it have made a difference? In other words, he would have attempted it again. Have you thought about that, and how have you dealt with that?
I haven't, and I think, as I matured and got down the road here, I'm just a couple years older than my pops was when he took his life. Um, I'm able to talk things out now and understand that whatever I'm feeling in the moment, there's something after this. There's the old rainbow at the end of that storm, and for my pops, I think if we were able to actually sit with him, because it was his pride. I know it was his pride. He
Hmm.
he was afraid of losing his home. You know, I owe back taxes, and the first thing they want to do is they want to attach it to your home. And I don't think maybe he understood 100% what he could have done at the time to ensure a better tomorrow for him. I mean, even if he had to sell his house to pay off, this $20,000 he owed in back taxes, even if he had to sell his house to pay that debt, he still would have had, money in the bank from when he sold his home. He could have built himself a new life. And perhaps that's a conversation we could have had at the time. I just, I don't know if, we could have got him through his struggles and helped him not want to go that route. I don't know. I just really don't. There's a whole lot of don't knows, but I wish I would have. I wish I could have had a next day with him to
Of
talk about it.
course. Absolutely. Is suicide a problem within the Marines?
It's heavy. Just learned a couple weeks ago that another Marine that I was affiliated with took his life. And you're talking somebody that's in their 50s that after 20 some odd years in a military career, and you know we were and I was just having this discussion with a friend in Florida about this, and this goes for any branch, especially for
Right, right.
those, yeah, especially those who work in teams and have seen things happen outside the wire, as we call it. You know, you get out of the military, whether that's after 4 years or after 20, 25 years, 30 years, whatever it may be. You get out and you wonder what your purpose is when you get out,
Oh,
because you leave behind what was your purpose for so many years. And so for a lot of guys, they get out, they struggle with, what is their purpose? They struggle with things they've done. I have a really good friend. He's a Marine Corps veteran. He's a TV personality. He's got, a lot of things going on for him. An actor, done movies. He has a series on Fox. And I can tell you that Rudy struggles with his mental health. And in fact,
huh.
so much so that Rudy was inside a facility for almost a year trying to heal. And still to this day, he struggles with it. And when we've talked about it a couple of times. What's getting to him? It's he misses the teams, he misses the camaraderie, his people. He misses, you get out and then you hear of somebody
Right.
that, yeah, you get out, but you hear somebody in your unit who was killed in action. You wonder if you had been there, if you could have saved them. So there's that. They call it survivor's remorse. But then on the other side of it, there's things you have done in other countries that pain you, that you process
Yes,
and
yes.
wonder if you can be forgiven for. And all those different things play a role. There's so many things that play a role. And then you come back here, and you try to integrate back into the civilian world. Maybe, for some of these guys or gals, they get in and they start families and things aren't going right in the family. You have to understand a lot of times these guys have seen some heavy stuff in battle zones, and they deal with things a little bit differently, and then they come back here and that plays a role in their relationships as well. So all these different things could play a factor. And they've actually talked about it. I'm connected to the VA in DC. I'm working with them with my software company. They used to say 22 a day for military.
What?
They say 20. They used to say that
Wow.
22, yeah, 22 a day have taken their lives every day. That's the average right now with military. But since COVID and everything that's gone on, they say those numbers are now up above 40, almost approaching 50 military and or veterans that are taking their life a day. And so it's a very prominent thing. The other thing that some folks struggle with, they come back, not only are they trying to find their place in the world, but it's the help and the support that they need that they're not getting. I don't want to make it about politics, but sometimes the funding is missing. And so they go into their VA and they're not getting the help they need. Boise, thankfully, is a very wonderful place to get VA help. There's a lot of cities it's not. And so for a
Oh,
lot of
I
these guys,
see.
they're just not getting the help they need.
As a victim of family suicide, do you have any advice I mean, I know this question has been asked in many ways often,
Right.
but do you have any advice that you can give people for specific signs that might save a life that you have noticed?
I notice it with my kids. My kids have their peaks and valleys too, and you start to see this. I know we're going to talk about it here in a minute, but with my software, we're working on an AI algorithm that can detect somebody's cell phone usage. So when they're happy, they're texting, they're involved, they're talking, they're using their phone to do certain things, surf, whatever it may be, the internet. But when you get into a depressive state, your activity drops. It
Oh
changes.
my goodness, that's so amazing. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So the way we interact changes with our devices, but we also change the way we interact with people.
Hmm.
And I really think we as friends and family and colleagues, we need to just check in every once in a while on somebody. And that's, I mean, my app's designed to check in, but we as people can check in with people and just make sure they're doing okay. I can tell you that some folks who are struggling with their mental health won't want to talk about it, but there may be signs. And, in those instances for me, I would think that perhaps maybe somebody else might be able to interject. I have made phone calls. I've had friends reach out to me and they've told me, I'm known, for wanting to save lives, oddly, with my company, and
Hmm.
people they'll reach out to me and say, "Hey, look, I'm not getting any interaction from my kid, and we just had one a few months ago. Would you be okay with calling them?" And I will. I'll just call somebody out
Oh,
of the
great.
yeah, and I get them on the phone. I'm just like, "Hey, what's up? Your mom connected us. I just want to check in on you. Like you. I'm a veteran. I've had my ups and downs as well, but I'm still here. I'm fighting the good fight, and I'll start to talk with them and see what's going on in their world. The one kid that I talked to is just having difficulty finding a job. And so we were able to talk through and able to make some connections, and I'm hopeful that those connections turned out for him. But I think, just as friends and family, and again as colleagues, we just need to be a bit more in tune to what might be going on. As that AI algorithm is looking for behavior with devices, our little internal algorithm can be looking for behavior and things that are changing as well.
Right.
And
Good
just
point.
yeah, ask questions. I mean,
Hmm.
really just ask questions. I wish I would have asked my pops more questions
Of
and would have got to
course.
the root of what his issue was.
Maybe this might be a stupid question, but are there certain personality types that are more prone to suicide?
Wow, I don't know. Off the top of my head, I would say right out of the gate, high achievers, people who are used to achieving at a
Oh,
certain
okay,
level,
right.
but yet they're not. So they're failing themselves in their brain. They're telling themselves they're failing or they're a failure. I think that might be someone as well. I grew up in a military family, and so I was always taught that I think things have changed a little bit, but back in the day, my pops always taught us as the man of the house, you are responsible for taking care of your family. And so when you grow up in this environment where you're taught your p's and your q's and your levels of respect for folks, and that you're the provider and that you are to you're to take care of a family. If you're failing in that area, I think that's another thing that can play into your happiness, your health, your mental health, whatever it may be. But as for certain types, God, I wish I knew. I mean, I'm sure there's all sorts of studies that have been done, and
Right.
they've looked into it. But people who are used to success and they aren't successful in that moment, I think that they tend to go down a rabbit hole, and their mental health has an effect on them. And for a lot of folks, they probably choose the next instead of staying where they are and battling through it.
Well, that gives us a lot of food for thought, obviously. Also, I'm sitting here, my heart is hurting for not only you. I really appreciate you being emotional and showing us your heart. That pain never goes away.
No.
It's all and then wrapped with, the guilt and everything else that you discussed. I know that people are going to relate to that, and I really appreciate you being so raw and open and bold to share that along with everything else. We're going to take a quick 5 to 10 second break, and when we come back, we're going to do the upside now, in that you have a solution not to suicide, but a solution to helping those who may be struggling with depression and other things that could lead them to suicide. So stay tuned and we'll be right back.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another: gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
Ever give up hope. We have been speaking with Kevin Quinn today, and this is a podcast that everyone needs to hear because it affects all of us in one way or another regarding mental health, depression, and suicide, especially suicide within our family, our friends, people that are close to us. Kevin has developed an app to help save lives in at-risk situations. My first question to you is this unique? Are you the only one who has developed this type of app? And then please tell us about it.
Yes, actually, it is. And I'm thankful for that right now. Who knows what the future holds, but currently we have the only thing like this out there. And how it started, I was living alone at home and had a couple of aging dogs. And a couple of years ago, a good friend of mine sent me a text and asked if he could call me, and he called me. So we get on the phone, and Brian tells me of his last 5 days that he spent in the hospital. He had a widowmaker heart attack. He survived, but he had a widowmaker heart attack. And this is a guy who's always been a health nut, great shape, college athlete, 5 years younger than me, and tells me of what he went through and the things he's going through, the stents in his heart, and now he's got a pacemaker. And so he was telling me all about this, and we spoke for about an hour. And after we got off the phone, I just stood there in the kitchen. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is 5 years younger than me. If this can happen to him, it can happen to me. And as I'm thinking about this, I look down and I see my one dog that's 14 and has no teeth. And I'm just thinking, I work from home. Yeah,
So does mine. Mine's 16 with no teeth. I can relate.
Yeah, so you understand this. And so I'm looking down at this little Yorkie with no teeth. And I'm just thinking to myself, if something happened to me in this home, who would take care of my dogs? And that's where the idea came from. Is like, gosh, I need something that, if something happened to me, someone would be there to take care of my pets. And because, living in alone at home, I work from home, it wouldn't seem strange if I didn't leave for days. And so I came up with the idea for this app that does a check-in, but it became so much bigger than this, so much more than this, because as we started to develop this text lifeline, really started getting into other verticals, not only just, aging people living alone at home, but medical emergencies, mental health situations, the aging community, as I mentioned. And so the app, that I came up with, which has so many other facets to it now, but just the basics to it is it does a daily check-in just to make sure you're okay. The app will reach out. You can use a smartphone, or you can have just a standard phone. It'll send a text out, checks in on you, make sure everything's okay. If you respond yes, the app resets, and it'll check in on you the next day. If you don't respond, we start a few windows throughout the day. So by the time we start at like 8 a.m., we get to 6 p.m. at night. If we've not heard back from you over these 3 or 4 different texts that have gone out, we then alert your team. So whomever may be added in your team, it could be a next door neighbor. If you're somebody in the aging community and you need somebody close to call upon, like again, it could be a neighbor, it could be your kids. For me, it could be obviously my kids. It could be a fellow Marine. It could be anybody. It could be your mental health counselor. your team can be built into so many different teams here. In fact, the military is looking at it for their team members as well. So the thing for us is, if I don't respond to those text messages by 6 p.m., an alert goes out to my team. It says, hey, we haven't heard from Kevin since yesterday. You should reach out. Well, now my team that I have selected, 4 or 5 people, can all reach out, text message, call, knock on a door. If they live out of state, they can send a police officer over for, just a check-in. A first responder can come over, knock on the door, and make sure you're okay. I'm currently talking with the NFL about this. They love the idea for their players. One, in fact, who was the case for this is a gentleman who plays football for the Indianapolis Colts. His grandmother who raised him is in L.A. Well, this young man playing football in Indianapolis is, he's unable to check in on his grandma as much as he used to, but our app will be able to check in. And again, if he gets an alert, if whomever gets an alert, they can reach out to the local police and have them do a welfare check just to make sure his grandma's okay. And so again, this is designed for mental health situations. We do a very non-invasive check-in. If I'm in a mental health struggle, I don't want to respond to people. But if the app checks in, I can just respond to them, okay. No alert will go out to anybody unless, I don't respond. And then someone will knock on the door or call or whatever it might be just to check in on you. Medical emergencies as well. I don't want to, do the TMI too much, but good friend of mine, he was a former pro wrestler with the WWF back in the day. Last May, one of his good buddies who he wrestled with, this guy's 6'10", big guy, put on some weight, fell and broke his hip in the home, and in his struggle to get to his feet, had a heart attack. He laid there for 3 days before he was found, and when they finally found him,
Wow.
when they finally found him, they got him to the hospital, and he had another heart attack, and he died in the hospital. And so this is a guy who was a big personality as well. They're pro wrestlers, millions and millions of followers, but even people with that kind of exposure and that kind of influence struggle with these things as well. And what Dallas said to me when we first talked about this, he's like, brother, he said, your app could have saved Scotty, because within 24 hours, somebody would have been knocking on the door, not 3 days later. And so, it's designed to help out in so many ways: mental health, medical, the aging community, just a way to check in. The last thing you want to do, in fact, I'm in talks with some folks right now on the investment side. Their grandmother passed away in her home in Italy, and she wasn't found for 30 days. And, the stories they tell about the condition she was in 30 days later is not something that a family member wants to find. So, even if she did pass away in the home, somebody would have been knocking within 24 hours versus 30 days later. And so there's a lot of different things that we've built into this app. Obviously, the daily check-ins just to make sure you're okay. There's a lot of things that are coming down the road that we're working on as we speak for revision 2 in this app, to include a new mobile device. We're manufacturing a new mobile device in partnership with T-Mobile. And this mobile device will help out folks who are sight impaired, as well as people who perhaps are tech adverse, because of where they might be in the aging process. Maybe a smartphone doesn't work for them, but this new device will help with that, as well as those who are sight impaired. So we have some really great tools that are coming. Like I said, my goal is to make sure that everyone sees their tomorrow.
What kind of feedback have you had?
Amazing feedback. Some, large pharmaceutical companies and healthcare groups, large healthcare carriers are very excited for this app to release to help mitigate risk in their situations. I wish I could give away some of the features. We're in the process of filing a patent, so I can't mention some, but I will tell you there are some really amazing features that are coming out in relation to this hardware device that will be absolute game changers for us globally. It works on a mobile platform as well as a satellite platform. So, it'll work anywhere in the world. People can take it hiking, camping, up wherever they may be going with themselves.
Right.
And check-ins can be done. Yeah. And if they're ever not okay, a message can be sent and a GPS location can be found.
And what about availability?
So the app, anybody who, like I said, anybody who has a smartphone or non-smartphone can install our mobile web-based app and be off and running. Text messages back and forth, communicating with folks, ensuring that people are okay. The new native app with some of those features that will mimic what we're currently doing, as well as a lot of other added features. We're about 8 weeks out on that native app, and then the mobile device is about 8 weeks out as well. So here in the next couple of months, we'll be releasing a whole new parade of amazing features and software and hardware devices to help save as many lives as we can now. But again, textlifeline.com, there folks can enroll and sign up and build their teams and be off and running.
So as far as availability now, what can you tell us?
Our mobile web-based solution is available. So again, textlifeline.com, you can see that there. You can build teams, and text message communication can begin back and forth between the loved one as well as the team members around them. Okay. The new native app and our new mobile device will be available in the next 60 to 90 days.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. In summary, what would you like to share with the audience?
Wow, we all know someone who's been affected by this. Whether it's a medical emergency in the home, perhaps somebody dying in the home, mental health. There's, the statistics around mental health right now are they're glaring. And, over the last 3 years with what we've just coming through a pandemic, those numbers have skyrocketed. So suicide rates are up. The mental health is just off the charts right now. Medical emergencies, they are what they are. And there's a lot of folks who are aging quickly, and for those folks living alone at home, having a resource to call upon would be a wonderful thing for them as well. It helps alleviate whatever stress and anxiety they might be going through. And as I mentioned earlier, pet owners, the last thing I want to do is have something happen to me in my home and my pets not be taken care of.
Right.
And so I just want people to understand that we at my company are going to do everything we can to ensure that as many people as we can see their tomorrows. Like I said, I don't want anyone to have to experience the kind of pain that I've felt. And I can tell you that as I mentioned, there's so many others out there that have experienced it or, could be on the precipice of, and I don't want that for them. So I just want them to understand that we're going to do everything we can to save every life that we can.
This is huge. I'm sure you're well aware of that. And even with kids and teenagers and
right.
It's limitless, absolutely limitless. How exciting. And again, your passion is clear and it comes across from your heart. And that I too appreciate. You are saving lives and you will be saving many more lives. Another thing to look at, this never would have happened if you had not been affected by your past.
You're right, and thank you for that. That's a great reminder that out of that, that storm,
That's right.
that darkness, there's a rainbow here.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you, Kevin. This has been inspiring to say the least, definitely informative, and I really appreciate sharing your story today on Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Thank you so much, Carol. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.